Happy Friday, everyone. This is WLBT's Ask the Experts. I'm Kelly Boyd, and joining me today is attorney Ronald Morton of Morton Law Firm. Welcome back.
Hey, thank you, Kelly. Good to be back.
All right, tell us what we're talking about today.
So we're going to talk today about a special veteran benefit for wartime veterans called a special pension for aid and attendance.
Okay.
And it's a really nice benefit that really can put tens of thousands of dollars in the pockets of our wartime veterans that need assistance. So
great.
It's a really important benefit that people need to know about.
Yes. All right, so we have questions for you, and those questions come from the Ask the Experts page on WLVT.com. But for you guys out on Facebook while we're live, you can ask Attorney Morton while we're live. All right, and so that very first question is, what is a VA special pension?
Well, that's a great question. It's a benefit that's been around a long time. I think it started around World War I or maybe even a little bit before that. But it's a benefit that basically gives tax-free beneficial money for wartime veterans that need assistance because of disabilities. And so the amount of the benefit has gone up over the years, of course. There are three benefits under this program. There's what's called a regular pension or standard pension. There's one called a homebound benefit. And then there's one called aid and attendance. The one we'll talk about today is aid and attendance, although the qualifications for them from a financial standpoint as well as for a disability standpoint are really the same. The reason we talk about the aid and attendance benefit is most of the clients that I deal with meet that medical qualification for aid and attendance, and it gives them more money. Okay. But they're all called a special pension. Now it's interesting. Pension, people assume, oh, that means retirement, right? I worked somewhere for 30 years and I'm getting money.
Yeah.
Here, you didn't have to be career military. You didn't have to work in the service for 30 years in order to get this pension benefit. They just call it a pension. You have to have 1 day of wartime service in order to get this pension benefit. So the name really shouldn't throw people off. It's a benefit for disabled wartime veterans.
Gotcha. All right. And so is that separate from the aid and attendance? Because the next question was, what is aid and attendance?
Sure. So, you'll hear me refer to it as aid and attendance because that's the benefit that we get the most often. The three levels of the benefit are a regular pension benefit, a homebound benefit, or aid and attendance. The homebound benefit gets a little less money than aid and attendance does. The regular pension gets a little less money than the homebound benefit. Okay. But for almost all of our clients, we've been able to qualify them for the higher dollar figure of the aid and attendant benefit.
All right. We have a question on Facebook from Xavier. You may be able to answer. It says, how do I get a copy of my DD-214?
Well, that's a great question because you need the DD-214 to qualify for any veteran benefit, including this special pension for aid and attendance benefits. Okay. The DD-214, for those that aren't in the service or aren't aware, is your discharge paper. It's the official government document that says this is the date that you went in, this is the date that you left, this is how many days of service that you have. This tells us whether you have an honorable or dishonorable discharge. Okay. It tells you, what rank you received, what benefits you received. It's a one-pager that basically summarizes your entire history inside the service. And so it's a really important document. It's really important to hang on to the original of that because when you apply for benefits, that's what they ask for. That's the gold standard of, did you qualify for this particular benefit? The question he's asking is, where can I get mine? Obviously the best answer to that is go to your file folder for your important documents where you stored it.
He asked, could the VA help? And
they may be able to. So there's a couple of things and there's a couple of problems. So, I would start with the VA or with the Veterans Administration. They have a way of searching their database, their documents for those DD-214s. The storage facility of those, this is sad, is St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh.
And so, going back World War I, World War II, that facility caught on fire about 20 years ago. And so many of these records were permanently destroyed. If you don't have your copy, the government's copy is missing. Now, it didn't completely destroy all of them, but for a lot of them, it's difficult to get. The other place I would suggest looking is in the courthouse where the veteran was residing at the time that they were discharged. And the reason for that is when they were discharged, they were given this document, hold on to this, and go file it in your local courthouse because 50 years from now you may need it and no one's going to know where it is. Okay. And they weren't required to do that, they were generally advised to do that, and many of them did. My father's, for instance, relocated it in Gulfport, Mississippi, at the courthouse. But despite the fact that he'd moved several times during life and wasn't real good about keeping up with papers, and we find that frequently if people can't find their or have no idea where their parents' documents are, but they know where the parent were living at the time of discharge, go to that courthouse, and many times it is there, and the VA will accept a court-stamped DD-214 as an original, so that works very well. Each county has a veteran service agent that works at the courthouse that can actually look those documents up for them. So I would call that courthouse where that is, talk to that veterans agent, and see if they can't look up to see is that a filed document. But that'd be your two best options.
All right. Okay. Thanks for your question, Xavier. And he also followed up saying, he said he exited the military for the second time in 92 and having major issues obtaining the...
Well, he's fortunate enough in 92, it's probably digitized. So I would, the fire is not going to likely be an issue there for someone that recent. It's these World War II veterans that we're having, and some ex-Korean veterans that we're having really trouble getting their original documents.
Isabel replied to him saying, complete an SF-180. Is that?
Yeah, it's a request for those military documents.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, you guys, for your comments.
Yeah, lots of form numbers with
Definitely.
with
I have no idea what we're talking about on this. Owen McDowell said, if you are 100% DAV, another acronym for me here, if eligible for aid and dependents, is A and D an additional benefit?
So you can't get both. You can get the higher of the two. Generally speaking, if you're 100% service-related disabled, you're getting more money than the aid and attendance would be. So you can't stack the two on each other. But if it's a partial benefit, partial disability, and the aid and attendance number is higher, you get the higher of the two.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so back to the questions from Ask the Experts page. Who can qualify for the special pension aid and attendance?
So I mentioned it's a wartime veteran. Wartime doesn't mean place of war. You didn't have to be in theater of combat. You could have been right here in Mississippi down at Camp Shelby
during
for
wartime.
Instance, but you overlapped the Korean conflict by a day, you're a wartime veteran. So it's time of war, not place of war. You also have to have 90 consecutive days in the armed forces, so active duty of 90 days. That sometimes kicks people off. I've had on multiple occasions people come in and they were in the reserves, but they were activated, and they were activated during Vietnam conflict, but they were only activated for 45 days. Okay. In all three cases that's happened, they were activated for James Meredith. And so they served for 45 days up in Oxford. That unfortunately that met their 1 day of wartime, didn't meet their 90 consecutive days. So it's 1 day of wartime, 90 consecutive days in the armed forces. You also have to be disabled, meaning you have to need assistance for the aid and attendant benefit, 2 or more activities of daily living. Okay. So things like dressing, things like toileting, things like bathing, things like feeding, things that you need, everyday things that you and I take for granted, you need assistance with.
Qualified by a medical provider?
It is. Yeah, medical provider is going to say, this person needs this assistance with these things. And it may be things that, it can't be left alone because they have Alzheimer's, they have dementia or something along those lines. And so they may need things, assistance with intermediate care needs as well. And that can also qualify, especially for a memory care individual. So that's the disability part of that. So you have the service requirement, the disability requirement. The third requirement is a financial requirement. So if you have too much money, you don't qualify. If your income is too high, you don't qualify. So this is a means-tested program. It's not just free money for our veterans, but for veterans that need it, they're wartime veterans that have the medical need for it, and their financial assets are such that they can't really adequately provide for themselves. It's a great benefit that for many of our clients makes the difference in them being able to stay at home and get the care that they need, or perhaps move to an assisted living facility where they're getting the care that they need rather than having to suffer at home alone or possibly prematurely going to a nursing home because that's the only place we could get money, we get Medicaid money to pay for that. And so it's a really great benefit, but there are financial limitations to it as well as the medical, as well as the service connection. I mean, not connection, I'm sorry, service, time and service, so wartime service. Okay.
I think in answering the qualifications, you answered the next two questions because they are, what does wartime mean? And you explained that.
Yeah, so and there are specific dates that apply. So World War I, to the extent there are any veterans still living from World War I, World War II, Korean conflict, and Vietnam. So World War II is pretty commonly known, December 7th, 1941, a day that will live in infamy, all the way to December 31st of 1946 is World War II service. So if you overlap any of that by one day and have that 90 consecutive days, you're good. Korean conflict is June 27th of 1950 through January 31st of 1955. So in other words, these are liberal definitions of these times of war.
Right.
And then Vietnam is February 28th of 61 all the way to May 7th of 75. There's a little difference if you're in theater of war or not theater of war. It gets a little more liberal if you're in Southeast Asia or not. But basically, again, pretty liberal. The last conflict is, of course, the one continuing, which is Desert Storm. Desert Storm began August 2nd, 1990, and is continuing. So the service requirement, though, beginning on August 2nd of 1990, it started a 1-year service requirement rather than the 1-day service requirement. But anytime after August 2nd of 1990 counts as wartime continuously.
Okay. All right.
So that's the wartime service. Was that the question?
Right. I was saying when you answered the question about qualifications, the next two questions, the one was about asking what wartime means, and then it asked were there income limits, which you said there are, but they also say what are the income limits?
Okay. So the income limits is, interestingly, basically matches what the benefit amount is. So a veteran, we hadn't really talked about the benefit amount. A veteran that is applying themselves is entitled to a benefit amount of up to $1,911 per month.
Okay.
That's basically almost $23,000 for a year of tax-free money that can go toward in-home care, assisted living, or nursing home care.
Okay.
A veteran with their spouse is entitled to $27,000 a year, so $2,266 per month of tax-free money that can go toward those in-home care, assisted living, or even nursing home costs. A widowed spouse, a lot of people are surprised to learn, a widowed spouse of a wartime veteran also can qualify on their own, and they're entitled to a little less money, so about $1,200, $1,228 a month, which totals about $14,742 for the year. Those are the benefit amounts.
Okay.
That's also the income caps. So if your income exceeds any of those numbers, you don't qualify for this benefit. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, too bad, I'm obviously above those numbers, but not so fast, because income defined by the Veterans Administration is not income the way you and I would define it.
Okay.
It is a net number for purposes of VA qualification, meaning we're going to net out from that gross income your medical expenses. So in other words, if I've got someone whose income, let's just take a veteran with a spouse, $2,266. So I got monthly income of, let's say, $3,000 a month. I am above that $2,266 number. But let's say that I also have sitters coming in the house on a regular basis, and I'm spending $3,000 a month for those sitters. My income is not $3,000 a month.
Right.
My income is zero for VA purposes.
Okay.
Meaning I would qualify for $2,266 tax-free money that I could use to assist me in paying those individuals for that care.
Because you need that disability benefit.
Exactly. I'm paying them for that aid and attendance for me. And so it's a net number. So a lot of people assume they don't qualify because they're looking at their gross income. But in actuality, income for VA purposes means something completely different. It's a net income after your payment for those approved medical expenses.
So are there net worth limits to qualify?
There are. So in addition to the income requirement, there is a asset limit. And basically we take pretty much all of their assets with the exception of household goods, automobiles, and home. We don't count those. Everything else we're going to count. And if those remaining assets are greater than $129,094, you don't qualify. You're over-resourced for that. So similar, we've had conversations in months past about Medicaid qualification, right? This works very much the same way. In fact, some of these numbers are exactly the same because VA is now using Medicaid's numbers for their qualification numbers as well. So some of these numbers may sound familiar to people, but it works very similarly. So if your assets are above those limits, we expect you to spend your own money until you're down below that $129,000. Once you're below that $129,000, VA then will pick up and pay for that benefit. So, but there is an asset cap, and there are exempt assets just like there are in Medicaid.
Okay, good. All right. Actually, I am going to take a break from these questions and ask you one. You wrote a book.
Oh.
Tell us about your book here.
Well, this is a book about estate planning in Mississippi, and it's called To Live and Die in Dixie. And so the book actually is designed to talk about disability in Mississippi as well as death in Mississippi. I thought a clever name from a song that's rather infamous in the state and in the Deep South. But that's what the book is about. It's not a history of the war by any means. But we do have a chapter in there on these VA benefits as well, which is why I brought this book. So if anybody would like a copy of this book, you can get it a couple different ways. One way of getting it is to just call my office at 601 Elder Law and request a free copy. Well, they'll get your name and address, and we'll be glad to send it out to you. The other way is pull your phone out and text the word Dixie, D-I-X-I-E, to 601-600-2662. If you type the word Dixie to 601-600-2662, it'll ask for your name and your email address, and we'll again get it back out. You'll get it right out to you. You'll get an immediate digital copy of it, and we'll also mail you a free hard copy.
So they can read right there on their phone.
They can read it right there on their
tablet.
phone. Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome.
So.
Okay, good deal. All right. So do the spouse's assets count when they're looking at those asset limits?
They do. So we can't switch everything to wife's name and say, okay, I'm broke. I'm below this $126,000. We're going to count household assets and household income. We also, though, count as medical expense household medical expenses as well. So it does work both directions on the income side of things. But for a married couple, we're going to count both their assets together and of their non-exempt assets. If they exceed that $129,000, then they're not going to qualify.
Okay. So what about the home? It says, what about the home?
So the house is an exempt asset. And so that's one way some people will qualify for benefits if they're over-resourced. We might go buy a more expensive home because the $150,000 home that they were happy living in, but they got $300,000 excess income, we're about to upgrade. Sure. And now they move into a $450,000 house, and they also qualify for VA benefits because the house is an exempt asset. House is fairly liberally defined with 2 acres surrounding the house. If you live on a place bigger than 2 acres, that excess land is going to count toward your $129,000 asset limit.
Oh, okay.
But anything with 2 acres or less is counted as exempt.
The next question is about land. It says, is all the land that the home sits on exempt too?
Yeah, it's unfortunately that's a rule change that we had last year. But it's basically a 2-acre strip. So if you're in a neighborhood, your house is fully exempt. If you live on a 1,000-acre farm, sorry, your 2 acres of it's exempt.
Which would be likely. We're very rural here in the States.
Yeah, it does happen. And if the land is not usable for anything, then there are exceptions to that. But generally, that's the 2 acres is the rule.
Okay. So. All right. Okay. What happens if you give your assets away? We've had that question talking about the nursing home Medicaid.
We have, and it works very much the same way. So. It used to be that we could actually help people qualify for this by simply giving their assets away and then applying for benefits the next month. There was no penalty for transferring assets for VA purposes like there is for transferring assets for Medicaid purposes. That all changed October 18th of 2018. And ever since then, there's a disqualification of 1 month for every $2,266 that's given away within 3 years of application. So we have, like Medicaid, there's a 5-year look back. VA benefits has a 3-year look back. So a 36-month look back, we go backwards and say, have you made any gifts? If you have, we're going to total those gifts up. We're going to divide them by $2,266. And the product of that division is going to give you the number of months that you're disqualified for the benefit.
Okay.
And so if I've got someone that, let's say, has $151,000, they're over the $129,000 exemption number that I said by about $23,000. So if I take this $23,000 that they've got and I give it to my child, and then I apply for this benefit, I'm not going to be qualified. I meet the asset standard because I'm at the 129, but I have given assets away within 36 months of applying. Okay. I'm going to be disqualified for 10 months. $23,000 divided by $2,266 is going to give me a product of about 10 point something. So for month 11, though, I'm qualified. We now start getting this benefit amount of $2,266 a month for a married couple. Okay. So just because you're over doesn't mean you shouldn't proactively seek to get qualified. There are things you can do. Gifts are okay as long as you understand what the penalty is. But it may be simple enough that rather than making a gift, I go buy a car. I go buy a $30,000 automobile and now I'm qualified, because remember, the car is an exempt asset.
Okay.
So it's not as simple as just, oh, well, I don't qualify, poor me.
Okay.
Take the next step and say, well, what can I do to become qualified? Because there are strategies, there are steps that can be taken to qualify for this benefit, just like there are for Medicaid. And they're written in the law. It's not something that we're sneaking around doing or we're not supposed to do or cheating the system. They're written in the law. The law is written assuming that you're going to act in accordance with it, that you're going to act reasonably and do the things that they allow you to do, that they permit you to do.
Because sometimes some of those things are needs, such as you need
Absolutely.
that transportation,
You need-
going to doctors or therapies.
Exactly right. Yeah. We don't want mom to be driving around a 30-year-old vehicle in an unsafe area of town. And so we have these exemptions for these very reasons.
Makes
Exactly.
sense. Okay. This is a fun question. What if you sell your car for $10?
Well, so I mentioned gifts. So if we give something away, we're going to be penalized.
Yes.
They're kind of on to you if you're going to make a super sweet deal. with
Yeah,
someone.
they're asking, is that a gift or a sale? I'd say that was
It's a gift. Yeah,
super gift.
Yeah, it's a really good deal that someone got.
Well,
so
depending on the vehicle, I guess.
Well, that's right. Yeah, but assuming the vehicle's worth more than $10, we take the fair market value minus what was paid for it, and the difference of that is going to be what's called an uncompensated transfer. Okay. And what we're penalizing is not a gift. What we're penalizing is uncompensated transfers, and so that would count as an uncompensated transfer to the extent that the value exceeds the $10.
All right. Xavier, if you're still with us, he thanked you for your answer and said Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. All right. Can you buy an annuity to reduce your net worth if your assets are too high?
You cannot. So again, that was an old strategy that people would use. They had too much in money. They would purchase a financial product, an annuity, and turn their money into an income stream. So now instead of having $200,000, I've got $100,000 in the bank, and I've got a $100,000 annuity that's paying me, $200 a month for the rest of my life, let's just say. And so my income has increased, my assets have gone away. VA used to permit that, but again, effective October of 2018, they say that is not a viable strategy. That that is not a purchase for anything other than qualifying for this, and that's an abuse of the system. Okay. And so, do not buy an annuity thinking that you're going to qualify for this. They've done away with that, and that's going to be a penalizing transaction.
Okay. And the next question is about a penalty. Is there a limit on the length of a penalty here?
There is actually. So, again, these rules are similar but different than Medicaid. Medicaid has no limit to the amount of penalty that they can apply. VA does. VA capture penalty at 5 years. So, let's say that I've got not an extra $23,000. I've got an extra $1 million.
Okay.
I give that extra $1 million away. I haven't done the math to tell you how much that is divided by $2,266, but it's a lot more months.
Go this way instead of that. You leaned in the other direction.
Oh, when we had the $1 million going to you?
Yeah.
So my penalty is going to be 5 years. It's going to be a 60-month penalty because the penalty is capped off at that length of time. So you're not going to have a penalty of any greater than 5 years, and it may be less than 5 years because the penalty starts running on the date of gift, not the date of application. Another important difference between VA and Medicaid. Medicaid starts running, penalty doesn't run until you apply for benefits. VA starts running immediately when you make the gift, which means give early and often. If you're over-resourced, the goal is to get these assets down and do it frequently enough to start the clock running because each gift starts a new clock.
And then it shows the regular gift giving, I guess. So
Well,
it doesn't look like you're trying to do anything.
Well, it doesn't really matter if you're trying
ordinary.
to or not. I mean, we expect people to act reasonably based on what the rules are.
Sure.
I assume that intelligent people wrote these rules and expect people to act accordingly. You got two sets of rules. You got rules for people that plan, and you got rules for everybody else. And so for people that want to plan, we're happy to help them do the planning, help them know what the rules are so that they can benefit, so that they can get these benefits that they have earned, that their spouse has earned for them, that they deserve because of their service to this country.
And your book has information about that.
It does.
Right?
I think chapter, 16 or something like that. But there's a whole chapter in there on this benefit. We're actually updating it because they did change the rules a year ago, and so we're having to update those chapters dealing with that. But yeah, it's got a chapter on that along with other planning as well. So some of the planning techniques we've talked about in past episodes dealing with Medicaid and things like that are also in this book.
Good. All right. And if you're just joining us, you can get a free copy of this book and digital copy.
Yeah, if you'll text the word Dixie to 601-600-2662, the word Dixie, then you'll get a digital copy as well as a print copy. Or if you just want to call the office at 601-ELDER-LAW, then we'll be glad to mail you a copy that way as well.
All right. Brian Warren says, on average, how many times? That may be a question off of something we just finished commenting on.
Average how many times?
Brian, give us a little more details and we'll get that answered for you. Thanks. Okay. Next question is, will it pay? We're talking about this special pension for aid and attendance is asked, will it pay for nursing home costs?
It does. So the benefit it's the benefit's there to provide for assistance with someone that needs that assistance. And certainly anyone in a nursing home needs that assistance and is receiving that assistance. Now, if that person is privately paying for their own care, the cost of that care is $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 per month. Chances are their income for VA purposes is a negative number. Not many people have monthly income that it goes anywhere close to reaching those levels in their retirement years.
Okay.
So they would qualify for that, assuming they're not on Medicaid. Now, if they are on Medicaid, unfortunately, VA doesn't say, well, in addition to Medicaid paying all your bills, we're giving you an extra $2,200 a month to go have a party with. Right. And so if you are on Medicaid, your benefit drops from the $2,266 a month to $90 a month. If you're on Medicaid. But prior to being on Medicaid, you get the entire benefit amount. You get the full amount that can go toward that cost of that care, and that plus your retirement income very well may cover your nursing home cost or go a long way toward that. And so we use this benefit a lot of times to help supplement people that have done planning because they can't qualify for Medicaid yet. We'll help pay the bill during the period of time that we're penalized for Medicaid purposes and get qualified for VA purposes in the interim time. So these things, while they kind of work hand in glove, if you will. So they work in conjunction with each other, but they don't stack on top of each other. It's an either or from a standpoint of when you're getting the benefit. Other than instead of getting, if you're a veteran and you qualify for this benefit, instead of getting $44 a month if you're on Medicaid, you get $90 a month. So you get to double that personal needs exemption, if you will.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and double up on the next two because that one was, will it pay for nursing home costs? And it does. So what about assisted living and in-home care?
It covers both, right. So again, someone that needs that aid and attendance, someone that has a sitter coming in providing care for them, someone that's moved to an assisted living facility because it's unsafe for them to be at home alone, or they can't they can't fix meals, or whatever reason, whatever that aid and assistance is that they're needing is getting provided for by that institution, qualifies them for this benefit, and provided that their income level falls below those thresholds and that asset level falls below the threshold, they get that $2,200 a month if it's a married couple, $2,266 a month, or if it's a veteran by themselves, $1,911 a month that can go toward that care. We got this benefit for my father-in-law, who was a Korean veteran.
Okay.
And he received that benefit, wound up in a memory care unit, received that benefit until he ultimately passed. And then the benefit then went, transferred to his wife. And so for my mother-in-law for the next 2.5 years or so, again, was able to, with a very modest pension coming in, plus that extra $1,200 or so a month coming in, was able to live somewhere that she could never afford to live otherwise, in an assisted living facility, and get the care that she needed. So it's a great, great benefit that gets these people that have earned this to be placed in a place that they need to be placed and that's appropriate for them, rather than trying to make it on their own without that, usually in a dangerous situation because they can't manage their own care, or prematurely going somewhere else because that's the only place they can get money for, i.e. a nursing home.
Because they've lost their spouse and then
they just can't, I can't live alone. I wouldn't have to be in a nursing home, but there's nothing in between. There's no one else to pay for. This benefit pays for it. And so there's a lot of people that qualify, frankly, don't realize they qualify for it. It's not something that's very well promoted.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Fortunate. Okay. Brian said, how many times can you be turned down for VA benefits?
To my knowledge, there's not a limit on being turned down. So if your application is rejected, you actually have a year to present additional information. The record's not closed on your application for a year, and you can always reapply as well. So I mean, sometimes we will get an interim denial for whatever reason, and we'll say, oh, okay, well, we need to give them more information about this. They don't understand this cost should offset this. And so we'll provide that information, and they'll do a reassessment, and then usually we'll get granted the benefit at that point. Or if not, we can decide to appeal, or we may file a new application. But there's no limit, to my knowledge, on the number of new applications that you can file.
All right, good. Hope that answered your question, Brian. Thanks for asking. Okay, can you pay for family members for care?
So you can, provided that you prove, first, certainly if they're a healthcare provider, you can. if they're not a healthcare provider, provided that you prove the service that they're providing, and that you have a written doctor statement that you need those services. So it's not an automatic thing. We do want to put it in place and have a contract in place. We want to make sure and have doctors' orders specifically written of this is care that is needed, and we want a documentation of the care that is being provided. So provided you meet all those things, the short answer is yes, but you want to do it the right way in order for it to not count against you.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Brian said, thank you and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you,
Christmas
Byron.
to you, Byron.
All right. Are there things that people should be doing in advance to qualify for this benefit?
Well, because there is this asset cap, if your assets are above that threshold, you might want to start giving some thought to, do I need to be doing some things to either recharacterize those assets so they're not counted, i.e. buy that $500,000 house, or do I need to start looking at perhaps dispossessing myself of those, going ahead and making those early gifts to make those asset levels lower.
Okay.
And because if we know there's a 3-year look back, we know that if someone meets the qualifications, I've got the service record, I'm feeling okay now, but I'm 86 years old. And I realize that I'm one fall away, one stroke away from needing these services. It may make sense to take those extra assets that I've got and to place them somewhere else so that if that fall does come in 37 months or 60 months, then I'm immediately qualified for this benefit and I can stay at home and pay sitters with the assistance of that VA money to help pay for those things. So the question really comes, certainly you should do it if you're over-resourced. The question really becomes where? What's the appropriate place to place that money? And I mentioned earlier, giving it to a child. That's kind of a common answer that people, will think of. That's their knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
There are a lot of problems with that. Not the least of which is once you give it to the child, you got no control of it.
Belongs to the child.
It belongs to the child. It's the child's money now, and so
Yeah.
they can do with it whatever they want, and you can't really say anything about it. Even if you're not worried about your child doing something like that, how do you feel about their spouse? Because if that child dies, that money probably is going to belong to the spouse or your grandchild, and you may have no say so in what happens to that money at that point. In addition, there are other things that are not predictable and are no fault of your child, like the child gets sued because of a car wreck, or the child gets in a bad business deal, or the economy just tanks.
Yeah.
Just like it did in 2008. There were a lot of people that went bankrupt that were good, responsible people, but the economy couldn't support what they were doing. Any of those things could cause the loss of your funds. So we never advise clients to transfer the money directly to children, but they got to get out of their name, because if it's in their name, it's countable. And so the place that we generally recommend putting it is in a trust. And there's a special type of trust that is ideal for this. It's designed specifically for this, called a Patriot Trust. It's a trust that's designed for veterans to hold their assets where they can retain maximum control of it, where it's protected from third-party creditors, it's protected from their children's divorces, it's protected from lawsuits and such, but it's not counted as theirs. And so it's outside of their name for VA purposes and starts our 3-year clock running for VA qualification.
Okay.
And by the way, it also starts the clock running for Medicaid qualification. So 3 years after we put assets in that Patriot Trust, they're exempt for VA purposes, and 5 years after that, they're exempt for Medicaid purposes.
Okay. All right. So here's the big question. How does someone get the benefit if they qualify?
So it's just an application. And it's not a terribly difficult application. I mean, it's kind of, I say that if you do your own taxes, it's not a difficult application, right? It looks very much like a tax form. It's
if you can handle TurboTax.
If you can handle TurboTax, you can handle this, yeah. A lot of small print and things like that. But essentially, it's an application that you make, and then you provide a lot of backup documentation.
Okay.
Now, that being said, there's a whole bureaucracy around it, as you can imagine. It's a veteran benefit. It's run by the Veterans Administration. There's a lot of built-in bureaucracy. And a lot of people are not successful, certainly on their first time, and sometimes are never successful in doing it on their own. We really recommend getting someone to help you with it, unless it's just a really straightforward application, and generally they're not so straightforward. A couple places you can go for help there. Veteran service organizations can provide assistance in making that application for aid and attendance benefits. And so you can go, check with any of the VSOs, and they probably have someone that's done it, 20 dozen times before, and B, is a representative that's recognized by the Veterans Administration to be able to help you and do that. So a VSO is a good place to go, or find someone that's an accredited VA agent, someone that the VA has accredited with. This person has the knowledge. This person that we allow them to represent people before us. and because this isn't their first rodeo. Our firm is a accredited agency, and we're happy to help our clients with that. Those applications, but like I said, VSOs are also available to do it. The third way of doing it is you can get a child or some other well-meaning friend to represent you on a one-time basis. So they don't have to get fully accredited if they're doing it once and only once.
Okay.
But anyone else has to do it. What you don't want to do is just get someone that's a well-meaning person that just says, "Oh, well, I'll just fill out the application and help you with it." If they're not accredited, they can't represent you in it. They're likely to mess something up. And frankly, it's illegal for them because they aren't. It's like practicing law without a license. And so if you have someone that said, "Well, I'm going to help you," but then they won't sign the application, it's a pretty good sign. It's because they can't and they know it, and they probably have a different agenda.
Okay.
The place to check, by the way, to see if someone is accredited, to do this or not, there's a website, and I don't have the full address, unfortunately. But if you will Google search accredited VA agents. The VA has a site that you can run a search in their database. You can search by name, you can search by state. You can find a list of people that are fully accredited with the VA, that meet the educational requirements, that have passed the testing requirements, that know what they're doing, so that you can know for certain this person can represent me in front of the Veterans Administration.
All right. And you said your firm is an agent. So the very next question was, does your firm help people apply for this benefit, and how much do you charge?
Well, great questions both. The answer is yes, we do help people apply for this benefit for our clients. And the reason I stipulate that for our clients is because the answer to your second question is we don't charge anything for doing it. It's a service that we provide for free for our veterans, and so we don't open it up to the world because there's no limit to the amount of free work that you're able to do for someone. Right. But for people that are our clients otherwise, we represent them and file their VA applications and the appeals if necessary at no cost for them. But again, veteran service organizations can also do that at no charge. There's a statutory fee cap of providing this. It's a pretty low number for people to serve. That's why there's not really a big industry out there of people doing this type of work. But like I said, that's a service that we provide for people that we otherwise represent, that we've done planning for.
Okay, that's very nice. How can our viewers find out more information about you and your firm?
So we practice. We have offices in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and our main office is in Clinton, Mississippi. And our phone number is 601-ELDER-LAW. And so if you're interested, our website is mortonelderlaw.com. And so you can go to check us out on the website. You can give our office a call and schedule an appointment, or schedule a phone appointment perhaps. If it's something we can do to help you, we'd be glad to talk with you about doing that.
And then if they're interested in getting a copy of your book, they can
text the word Dixie to 601-600-2662, or call the office at 601-ELDER-LAW. We'll be glad to send you a copy.
All right, and you're going to come back and see us next month.
I am.
I believe that's January 20th. No, January the 10th, excuse me.
Okay, early in the month. All right.
So you can send your questions for Attorney Morton to our Ask the Experts page on WLBT.com. That's also where I just checked our schedule to find out that episode is January 10th. So we will see you then. Do you have big plans for the holidays, Christmas and New Year, and all in between?
No, I'm excited to stay at home because my children are coming home. So
awesome. Good for you.
So looking forward to a peaceful holiday here in Jackson.
I just realized I have a ton of shopping to do this weekend. I'm having Christmas down on the coast tomorrow at my mom's, and right after I've got to shop for the actual day here in our area. So good luck to you all out there. I hope you have a good weekend. Thank you for watching. Thanks for your questions. We'll see you next time. Have a good weekend.